Hello, everyone. I'm Helen Thomas from AnyQuest. We're an enterprise AI enabler. AQ24 is a series of live conversations with innovative leaders across different industries. Our aim is to discuss the challenges and opportunities for AI in the enterprise environment. We discuss use cases and ideas with people like Vik. Vik is a great colleague of mine, and he has the background in B2B sales from Oracle, Microsoft, Tableau, Salesforce, and most recently Gong. And it's a great honor for him to spend the time and focus on particularly how generative AI can help go-to-market B2B sales from pre-sale to the whole customer journey with AI as your assistant. So welcome, Vik.
Thanks, Helen.
So why don't you start with your background?
Yeah, let me quickly share my screen here. And it's probably always easier to just... So thanks, Helen. So I actually spent about 20 years in various B2B companies, and I would say I've probably done almost every job in go-to-market. So my first 8 years were in various companies that got bought by Oracle, but I was doing a lot of technical pre-sales roles. So I was doing technical pre-sales, I was doing some product management. I actually led an Americas-wide pre-sales team. Then after that, I switched to sales because every pre-sales person feels like they can make a lot of money by going into sales. So did that for 8 years through Oracle, then Microsoft, and then Tableau. And then the last 8 years I've spent working in what I would call mostly CEO-sponsored initiatives, bringing to market things which were not very well known, or where a path had not been defined. And so at Tableau, I was working with our GSI team to help get our global system integrators like Accenture and Deloitte to work with us. And then after that, I helped set up our customer success function as part of that team, and then driving large transformational engagements, which then transformed into what I did at Gong. So a lot of post-sales. So I got to see pre-sales, I got to see direct sales, I got to see post-sales. And so that's kind of my background.
I love the term jungle gym. So could you elaborate on that, especially if you just zoom out and describe, these billion-dollar SaaS software businesses, how that organization and process looks like from pre-sale to post-sale.
Yeah, and so the jungle gym analogy, actually, it's part of it is when I was at Salesforce, they had a very good way to describe people in the organization, and they bucketed people into 3 categories.
Nice.
And so there were what they called as the mountain climber. This is your traditional, you start in a particular role, then you grow to become a manager, then you become a director, then you become a VP, and you just grow up the management chain, lead large teams. And so that was one path I could have taken. I was in pre-sales, I was a pre-sales director, and then I could have become a VP and managed a pre-sales team. Then they had another definition for what they call deep divers. These are people who are individual contributors who become really, really good at a topic, but they don't want to manage. But they still grow because they're experts in their particular topic and they go really deep. And then the way they defined people like me was they called us adventure seekers, where you didn't go, it wasn't a corporate ladder where you just kept growing, but sometimes you were a manager and then you became an individual contributor. Then you became a leader of a team, and then you went back to being an individual contributor, constantly seeking new adventures. And that was kind of what I feel like my career has been, is this combination of various experiences that I've captured through pre-sales, direct sales, and then post-sales.
In terms of chaos, so when Dimitri, my co-founder, and I started AnyQuest, we see this opportunity as for enterprise organization to adapt generative AI in a systematic way, because in general, in the wild west, it's a chaotic situation with ChatGPT, hundreds of millions of users, lots of people chatting and talking about how to use AI, but there is really not a very structured way from data source, data security to input output, especially to build your data intelligence within your organization. So elaborate on organizing chaos, how you see it as opportunity at this, juncture of your career to focus on, AI-enabled go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, and so that's a great question, Helen. So what I started realizing was that in a lot of organizations, there were these initiatives or efforts, strategic priorities that needed to be done that had never been done before. Like when I was at Tableau, we were growing really, really fast, and we needed to go figure out a way to go get the Accentures and Deloittes to work with us. Or we switched from a perpetual license to a subscription license, and we needed to set up a customer success team. And the problem was that there was no past blueprint or template that we could look at to go then apply it to going and doing something completely different. And so invariably, these initiatives are all the same, right? You start off, you don't know how to do it, you don't have the experience, and then you got to learn by doing. And I feel in a lot of ways, AI is the perfect example of learn by doing. In some ways, it's not really learning. You just feed it a lot of data, and then it just connects a lot of random dots, and then it comes back with a point of view. And I feel like, a lot of my career has been that where, like my latest project, at Gong was we were bringing our sales engagement platform to market, and we had built the product, and we didn't know how to really have the post-sale motion defined, like what did services need to do, what did customer success need to do. And so I was leading an incubation team that basically went and incubated the post-sale motion, working with our beta customers, taking feedback from them, working with the product team. And by doing this with the beta customers, we came up with a point of view and a process that we then handed off to other teams. And so, once we organized that chaos, we handed it off to our, what I would call the scale out teams, like the PS team and the success team to then go and execute on it.
Awesome. Do you have specific, perspectives or aspects of, Gen AI for go-to-market? Are there specific use cases you'd like to show us?
Yeah, and maybe before we get into
Yeah.
the kind of specific use cases, maybe we should talk about why, right? Like why should we even be thinking about Gen AI for go-to-market? Like why is this important? Like why not just do things the way we've been doing it? Like why change, I feel, is always something which organizations struggle with. And I, this is my personal opinion in just, having been in go-to-market, reading a lot of stuff, talking to a lot of my colleagues, I do feel B2B sales in some ways is broken in terms of almost everybody I talk to, outbound is not working anymore. So you're cold calling, you're sending cold emails. There's just too much coming at people. Nobody's listening to calls. Like I saw one example where they said that you have to make almost like 250 calls before you get one response. And so, when you start looking at numbers like that, it's just a spray and pray approach. Then if I look at sales, a lot of B2B salespeople are not making their numbers. It's like, I think the participation rate of 30%, which basically means if you have a team of 10 people, only 3 people are making their number. And so that too shows you that obviously something is broken because people are not successful doing that. Customer success was created to drive down churn, but if you look at churn currently, it's at the highest levels that it's been. So while the customer success people are awesome, I feel like the function and what it was set out to deliver is not working. And lastly, I look at cost structure. A lot of companies are now having to pay the cloud vendors and the LLM vendors on a consumption basis, but then the charging of the user is on a user basis. And so you have this disconnect between what you're charging, your revenues coming in per user, your expenses based on consumption. And all told, I feel like this cannot continue. And as I take a step back, the question is, will Gen AI now in some ways address some of this and be part of the solution? And that's the hypothesis that I want to go explore, because we need to do more with less. Old ways of doing are not working. And there is this amazing new technology that's coming out called Gen AI, but nobody knows, will it actually live up to its promise or not?
Awesome. I think this is a great summary of the pain points or the opportunities in the market. And I think there are talks or generalized numbers in terms of opportunities, how Gen AI can increase productivity. Do you want to talk more about that? Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. So, if I look at almost all the hype that is there for Gen AI, it's about productivity. And the numbers that are being thrown out are like huge. And you're seeing it also in the stock market. We're kind of almost in this Gen AI like hype bubble currently. It's like the dot-com boom all over again. But then Jamie Dimon is saying this is not like the dot-com boom, this is real. And I mean, the numbers like Ernst & Young has a report out which says that over the next decade, $1.2 trillion to $2.4 trillion worth of productivity, will be driven by Gen AI. McKinsey says 4.4 trillion annually. And then HBR comes from the other side where they're like, is this impact on productivity actually overblown? Are people just hyping this up so much? And is it really true or not? And at this point of time, if you look at it, even some of the articles which are being written, people are asking questions like, yes, does it make sense for me to spend money, whatever it is, $20, $30 per user, and to get a Copilot license? Is it really driving the value of that $20, $30 per user that I'm having to spend? I think all of us are at this point very familiar with ChatGPT. We go, we use it. It writes good poems. It, cleans up our emails and it does a few things. But if you were to talk to people and say, is it really helping you do your job, your day-to-day job? I think most people I talk to, they are really not seeing it, right? And so that's, I think, where we're at this cusp where the potential of the technology is amazing. There are lots of small use cases, but in terms of enterprise organizations using it and people getting the value, work needs to be done. That's kind of my perspective.
Right. So this kind of tee us up in terms of how organizations should look at Gen AI and what kind of impact that Gen AI can make. As we say, add AI to your workforce, and it really takes, the management and the stakeholders. How do you see it, given that you had a career in the B2B sales, and then now we're seeing the new revolution or evolution of Gen AI? What's your perspective on what can happen, what we can do on day-to-day basis to even get close to these numbers?
Yeah, and I think the statement that is going around, which I agree a lot with, is that everybody's now talking about AI will not replace your job, but a human with AI will replace your job. And I think that's a good framing before we go any further, because the first reaction that people are having is like, oh my goodness, AI is going to take my job and it's going to come after white collar jobs. And I think I do agree currently, at least based on where the technology is, that it won't be the AI itself. It's not predictable enough. I think there's enough errors happening in Gen AI and there's enough hallucination and just enough stuff where it's not practically in a place where we could just have agents do everything for us. But what I'm seeing, at least in my experience playing around and working with it, is that if you are an expert, it can absolutely help you do your job much faster. Things that might have taken you a day to do, you can now probably do it in an hour. And so those kind of improvements will definitely help. And those people who are now leaning into Gen AI and are looking at how they can leverage it in their work will definitely see the benefits and the productivity of it. So that's kind of, I would say kind of framing of the conversation is not that it's going to replace our job. Now, in terms of use cases and what I see, Gartner recently came out with this. I think this is just like a week old, where they were talking about the AI opportunities in organizations, and they broke it up into two kind of parts of the circle. On the right side, at least my right, is the kind of game-changing AI. And these are the use cases that we hear a lot about, people building products with Gen AI or adding Gen AI to their products where it is driving additional value. So for example, my old company Gong, we added Gen AI to our product. So Gong is a conversation intelligence platform and revenue intelligence platform. We take customer conversations, analyze those conversations, and then tie those conversations to opportunities. So you can now forecast better, you can understand your sales pipeline better, you can engage with customers better. And we've basically added Gen AI on top of it so that now you can go and ask a question of your deal. So imagine all the interactions that are happening within an account. You can go and say, who are we talking to? What are we talking about? Just conversationally asking those questions using Gen AI. So that's a good example of game-changing AI. Another example is, I think, Kelarma is the big one everybody's talking about. They came out with an article which said that they let go 700 support people, and now they have a chatbot that does the job of 700 people. So those are, if you can think about it, like big, high impact, high value use cases. Oftentimes to do that, you need very, deeply skilled data scientists and AI people that really understand the data, understand how to custom code an LLM, how to build your own custom LLM, and then write against it, how to, integrate it into your product. And so that's kind of, one side. And we are going to start seeing more and more of this. More companies are adding. I mean, you're seeing this with Microsoft with Copilot, Google's adding it to their workspace and just driving that productivity. What I like about what Gartner wrote here is the other side of it, which is what they call everyday AI. And this, I think, is the piece which not too many people are talking about, which is how does this affect the life of the everyday person? Not something where I'm going to have something built into a product, but let's say I am a salesperson and I need to do account research. Today, the process is very manual. I go read the 10Ks, I go research the customer, I listen to a podcast by their CEO, I understand what their priorities are. Then I take all that information, then I combine it with my messaging, then I come up with a point of view, then I email the customer, then they respond to me. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Then I got to come up with a different point of view. And then, 3 months later, they come out with, earnings, and I need to understand what that is. So if you think about that process, it's very, very manual, takes a lot of time. And if you say even like, a company has, let's say, 50 salespeople, and on average, they spend 10 hours per account, that's 500 hours. And let's say it's just 5 accounts per rep, that's 25,000, 2,500 hours that could absolutely be, are done with AI. But the problem is that to do that is a lot of work. And what is not there today are easy ways for business users or knowledge workers to actually go and build those kind of quick, Gen AI applications which solves their everyday needs. Does that make sense?
I love this, Gartner sort of a reflection of where we are with AI. So how do you see the data part of it in terms of both the right and the left? Where do you see the evolution in terms of in the organization, the feed and the storage, and now the generative nature of leveraging the data source and producing even more data analytics with AI? Do you have kind of a thought on that?
Yeah, and I'll probably give you a point of view for the game-changing
Sure.
piece versus the everyday AI piece. And the
Yes.
game-changing AI, as you can imagine, is where you are really trying to use organizational data. I'll give a Gong example again, rather than talk theory. It's probably easy. So Gong's big secret sauce is they have 8 billion interactions of like calls and emails and stuff like that, of just how salespeople and go-to-market teams talk to customers. And what they realized is when they were trying to do Gen AI on top of the conversations, if they just went to OpenAI and used that, the accuracy was not that great, because just the generic large language model, you go ask questions, it was hit or miss. I think we had like 50% accuracy. And so what Gong did is it said, we have 8 billion interactions, let us build our own custom LLM. And so they spent the engineering effort to build their own custom LLM. And on top of that, now suddenly they can, because now they're giving context in terms of, in the context of you as a revenue professional, when you ask this question, what does it mean? And doing all the work that goes into it to really fine tune the models. One of the things we started doing was around, for a lot of people who are familiar with sales methodologies, there's this methodology called MEDDIC, where, MEDDIC is a very common framework, but it's how you go and evaluate your opportunities to make sure you're asking all the right questions, checking all the right things. And Gong was able to build something like that because we know revenue, we know the calls, we know when a customer is talking in the context of sales, what is a metric, what is an executive sponsor, what does defined pain look like, all those things, and it's able to pull it out. But if you were to just give a call to a generic LLM, you'll probably get some response. There's a bit of a hit or miss, but if you really fine-tuned it. But as you can imagine, that takes a lot of work, a lot of data, and a lot of technical skill to constantly fine-tune the model to give you the answers exactly. Um, the flip side is people just take a call and they could give it to Gen AI and come back with results. And that can also work. But this is where I think if you want to go from POC to real usage, the amount of work required and the kind of tuning that's required is much high. So that's the right side. Any questions on that before I go to the left side? Yeah.
No. I think that's a great summary. I'm really curious about the left side in terms of data efficiency. As you know, Sam Altman in Davos, he basically declared that we don't have enough energy to run the super AI. So there got to be some kind of a way for the everyday AI to have sort of the contextual data and leverage the generic, LLMs to produce this, everyday productivity boost. So I'd love to hear what you can envision on the other side.
Yeah, and so everyday AI, like you said, one is because these are really small use cases which save you, what I call micro productivity hacks, right? Productivity here, productivity there. The value is not in the individual, like, hey, I help somebody with account planning, but the value is if I help you with account planning. Another common use case in sales is list generation. Like my brother works for a company where he leads a team that they have like 5,000 customers that they need to go after, and these are small and medium-sized businesses. And for him to tell his rep that you need to go prospect into those accounts, they don't even know where to start. Like if you have 5,000 accounts, what do? You can't read their website and figure out which one is right or not. And so he's sitting there saying, I don't even have a way to go tackle that. I have another, customer of ours who's uh, got a problem with list generation, doing better account research, go get a person's information from LinkedIn, match this stuff and tell me is it a fit or not. So, so those, if you go back to those kind of little use cases, the going and saying you need data scientist and build custom LLM and take your data and do all of that will not work. And so you need a bit of a different approach. And I think this is where what I'm seeing is that there is this RAG framework, to throw kind of some technical jargon out there. But what you can do is if you can somehow take your specific data and then pass it on, pieces of it to the LLM, combining those two. So it's almost like you use small personal data with like the big generic LLM, you're able to still generate outputs which are quite accurate. The challenge I see on everyday AI today is that people are struggling with ChatGPT. Like if I go back to the example, so I was talking to a friend of mine who's trying to do account research. And so I'll tell you his process today, and then you'll see why this is broken, right? So first is he goes to the company's website, downloads a 10K. And so the 10K is the annual report that comes out of the company. And he wants to understand what their priorities are. He takes the 10K and goes and uploads it to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT throws out an error because the file is too large. So then what he does is he goes and he takes the pieces of the page. So maybe there are like 10 pages that are relevant to what he wants. So he goes and he kind of cuts that out, puts it into a Word document, copies and pastes it. Then he uploads that. And then he asks this question, what are the priorities? Who are the key stakeholders? Stuff like that. And he gets an answer. Then he takes that answer, cuts and pastes it back into his Word document. And then now he wants to tie it to his messaging, his company specific messaging. But he doesn't want to put his company specific messaging out in ChatGPT because there's like privacy, security concerns that he has. So now he's stuck. And so he can't really combine the two. And this is where, if from an everyday AI standpoint, if we could just give people a kind of personal workspace where they could upload their documents that they care about in a secure way and then ask questions off of it, that in itself is a big productivity enhancement. And then you tie workflow to it, where imagine I could go, you just give me the name of a company, I'll go to the web, download the 10K, then I'll go download the, whatever the podcast that the CEO is talking about. I take both of those, I take my messaging, and then I let you ask certain predefined questions. And then I take that output, put it into a PowerPoint. Now that whole process that might have taken somebody 2, 3 hours, 4 hours to do can be, I can do it now against 100 accounts in like 15 minutes or whatever time it takes for GenAI. So that's the kind of, potential that I see of the opportunity for us to tackle with the everyday AI stuff and go past. It's almost like a chat GPT plus where take it away from it's just being cool and people playing around with it to actually helping people automate certain little workflows that could drive value for them.
So how do people find you and discuss these opportunities further, Vik? You want to give people your URL, your LinkedIn profile, so that, I know we have a great audience on LinkedIn chiming in right now, and that this live event can be, replayed anytime on demand. So tell people how they can reach you, Vik.
I mean, I think LinkedIn is the best. It's the easiest one. I think for those of you who have been following me, you know that I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm posting. And so just to kind of take a step back, I'll tell you my experience with GenAI. I started my own business, and I have been applying GenAI to my business. So everything from I use GenAI to come up with a name for my business. It's called Visceral Solutions. It's Vyceral. I told it to come up with a name, made up word, but it has the initials of everybody in my family, me, my wife, and my two kids, VYCE.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it came up with this word. And then why visceral is because it's saying that you like to go deep into a topic, and then you like to put together and come up with solutions which are unique and different. And so visceral, the actual English word spelled the normal way, means intuitive and stuff like that, right? So it came up with a tagline for my company, which is, tangible outcomes, deep understanding, which I think reflects who I am. So anyway, point being that they can connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can follow my journey of like how I'm starting my business, how I'm applying various aspects of Gen AI for real practical use cases. And I'm happy to connect with people and share my thoughts and help them with this.
That's awesome. Great storytelling. I'm sure we're going to have you back on specific topics, such as the workspaces, task flow, the overall productivity, maybe not just for go-to-market, but for the whole organization, as you said, for all knowledge workers to be able to increase their productivity with Gen AI. Do you have final words on AI, your prediction, your worldview on AI before we finish or complete this short session today?
Yeah. And actually, I have one more story, Helen, on the everyday
Sure,
AI.
please.
So this goes back to my experience at Tableau. For those of you who don't know too much about Tableau, Tableau was formed because our CEO at that point of time saw the need for the everyday person to analyze their own data. What he noticed when he was working at a consulting firm as an analyst was that he was struggling with Excel. He would get these Excel sheets, he could not understand the data. And so if you go back to it, there were lots of people building game-changing analytics. There were products which let you build reports, dashboards, business objects, Cognos, and stuff like that. But there was no product for the everyday knowledge worker to ask questions of that data. And so Tableau was created to help people see and understand data. And that was the vision and mission statement for Tableau, which I see so many parallels between what Tableau did for data and analytics, making it relevant to everybody, to same thing with Gen AI. It's this amazing technology where a lot of people just can't access it today because there's no way to do it, right? And so that's my kind of personal, also, another reason why I'm excited about this and trying to bring, Gen AI to the everyday person. So what I do see, I mean, I do feel like, going back to your earlier question on like what I see as like parting thoughts is this is not easy. So I've worked in enterprise customers for a long time. And what I notice is it's just hard to drive change in enterprise customers. And using Gen AI is not natural. It all starts with you asking a prompt. And you might be like, oh, what's so difficult about asking a prompt? But a prompt is, if not done correctly, can give you all kinds of wrong answers. So you need to know the context. Who am I talking to? And suddenly it becomes very, very specific. You need to know the topic that you're asking a question very deeply. And so it's going to be very hard for enterprises to just roll this out and say, just go do it and people will get value. So they're going to need help. They're going to need support. They're going to need to create COEs and spend a lot of time educating and enabling people. And we're just, the last thought I'll leave you with is somebody said that at this point of time, this technology is as bad as it will ever be because it is only going to get better. And if you already see the amount of impact it's had with like what I would call a very, very early stage nascent version of the technology, you can just imagine where it's going to go.
It's great. Thank you for spending the time. And we definitely will schedule more with you on specific topics, and you may provide some mentoring, coaching using, the solutions that you're using every day. fabulous story about your family and your new firm and how you came up with the name. Thank you so much, Vik. You can reach out to him on LinkedIn. He's very active, blogs, lots of thoughts that we could, contemplate and discuss on the platform. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you.